Start the recording. Hi, it's JupyterLab development meeting for August 20. I got a tooltip that just went up in front of my date. August 26th, 2016. Let's start with introductions. We have a couple new people here. Sven and Anton, do you want to start, and then we'll go around?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Sven. We are from a company called Typefox, and we've been starting using JupyterLab just recently for some product we are working on that is like more or less a cloud product for our developers. And so we'd like to contribute the kind of the basic stuff we are working on back. Like the biggest thing at the moment would be the abstraction for the editor that Anton has been working on, and also maybe the Monaco integration, like using Monaco instead of CodeMirror.
We're really excited about it. We've been wanting to head this direction, so thanks.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, my name is Anton. I'm also working for Typefox together with Sven. Yeah.
We are based in Germany, northern Germany.
In Kiel.
Cool. Actually, I just realized everyone's got their name already. Let's see, everyone else has been here in the dev meetings before. Let's move on to discussion items and status updates. I think for me, the biggest discussion item and status update would be third-party extensions. Are there any other topics that we need to discuss to make sure we're giving ample time for what we need to discuss? Do you want to discuss your editor work, Anton and Sven?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, it would be nice, but it depends whether you had a look at this.
I've glanced at it, but and it looks like a couple of people have given an initial first look at it as well. But it might be helpful to understand better the context of the pull request and like the big ideas behind the PI.
Yeah, okay. So we start now, or like?
Can we talk? Let's talk about third-party extension first. That's all right.
Yeah, Brian just joined. I'm getting some echo on this, so I may mute everybody, and then you'll have to mute yourself, unmute yourself.
Steve, do you want to give a quick update on where we are in third-party extensions?
All right, so I've been doing some research on how other editors in this sort of in this space handle third-party extensions. I don't know of one that is fully in the browser and allows extensions. I'm still researching in that area, but VS Code and Atom are both JavaScript-based editors that allow plugins. They are both desktop applications, so they're using Node on the desktop as opposed to being in the browser and having to deal with the browser environment. But we can learn from some of their packaging methods. What they do is they provide a core that is available from the environment. So either you can require Atom or require VS Code, depending on which one you're using. And then each plugin is a fully standalone chunk of code that's self-contained. So you can't share code between plugins. So they're fully self-contained. That doesn't lend itself well to a browser environment in that you don't want to have to fetch all of these files over and over again over a remote connection. And also we don't have the require JS loader. I'm sorry, the node loader, require loader. We are forced to use browser loading capabilities, which right now is either a script tag or require JS or something like system loader. So where we're at is trying to rectify, making it easy for extension authors to produce their installable things, making it easy for vendors such as Anaconda or Ubuntu to provide these things as chunks that get combined, and balancing the shipping of code versus assembling it or building it on the user's computer, preferably not having multiple build chains set up. If we can just use what they're guaranteed to have with Jupyter in that a working Python environment, then that would be ideal. But there's a lot of things to weigh in all of this. So there's an ongoing discussion in the issue I posted. Very open to suggestions on this.
Hey, I just posted first on the thread on the some discussion. I don't know if you guys saw that.
The way I thought, we had two classes of users. One class of users is a single user situation where the user we probably don't want to require them to have NPM or to do any build step, and the network latency is not such a big issue because likely they're running on localhost. So being able to fetch packages individually instead of bundling becomes a lot more feasible. And for that class of users, it seems like shipping all your dependencies, essentially shipping your node modules directory, and doing some deduping, which we could probably do from Python at server runtime, and don't worry about bundling. And then the second class of users is the ones that are dealing with multi-user setups that are served over the network. In a multi-user situation, we highly recommend using JupyterHub or some situation or something like that. JupyterHub already has an NPM dependency, so there's NPM already going to be on the server in that case. And the users are the people that are installing the extensions will have hopefully better, higher technical sophistication. So they should be able to manage an NPM-based build system for bundling and or deduping any third-party extensions that are installed. So to me, it sounds like we can tackle the two use cases. They have different requirements and different capabilities.
So I have a question. So when we met earlier in the week, we pretty much decided that doing multiple bundles was going to lead down the road to insanity. And I guess what I'm wondering is what's changed since then? Because we had a pretty clear decision.
Two things. Yeah, two things. One is, yeah, well, okay. I was going to summarize your objection, but also mention that we're not talking about multiple bundles here. We're talking about multiple distributions, possibly the same modules, but not bundled together. So bundling, when we say bundle, we're talking about Webpack bundling things together so it can't be taken apart again. And what we're suggesting here is separate node modules directory that we can still work with at server runtime. Either deduping or the server admin can bundle those together at server runtime. But the big decision change became from a point that Selvin brought up. Selvin, go ahead. I know you really want to make this point.
Yeah, I think that if we think that a basic data scientist could pip install IPy widgets, and that pip install triggers some npm build, and if we believe that that's like a workable scenario, we are just shooting ourselves in the foot. We really need to have a form of extension that might be not as powerful as when you rebuild the entire environment with npm packages that doesn't require npm. Like doing a build on the user's machine is like bringing all the complexity to the user. We'll have to debug people complaining about the npm install not working, or because they have done some other things with npm or configured it badly in the past. It's going to be a huge mess. And people were already having a lot of difficulty with our notebook extension and server extension mechanism that was much simpler than having to build a JavaScript npm package and doing a bundle. And therefore, I made a proposal for a mechanism of extension that would be less powerful than the one where you can dedupe everything and have like a real npm extension on the server side that you build with JupyterLab. like the ones that we've done last time, but that should allow things like widgets and the type of extensions that we already have in the notebook, and without having to do any sort of dedupe. So if you're okay, I can carry on, or if you have a question, I can. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you describe how you got rid of the requirement to dedupe? Because there are some things that literally can't exist in duplicate.
I think the main thing is not about deduping. The main thing is about shipping your dependencies. And so the change here is that we ship the node module directory, the dependencies, so that one, you don't need NPM to pull things down, and two, you don't need network access to be able to install an extension. You don't need network access at runtime or at server build time. You can just take a package and put it in.
So this would require
the node module. Sorry, the node modules is gigantic. We have packages that are over 300 megabytes. That is just not an acceptable thing.
Yeah, if you look at the node modules directory just for Phosphor, which has absolutely zero runtime dependencies, there's like 300 directories in there just to support what we use for building Phosphor in order to ship it.
If I can chime in,
I think is the non-starter because they're always going to be enormous.
No, I think the first thing is we only ship runtime dependencies. We only ship runtime dependencies, and Steve had a good idea of go ahead and deduping at package build time, stuff that we know is already going to be upstream. So you know your upstream packages, and you can get from them what dependencies they're already pulling in for runtime dependencies, and you can dedupe partially, at least based on your upstream dependencies, the upstream packages.
So in any case, if we agree that we can't bring all that complexity to the final user, the data scientist who just wants to install some widgets extension, if we agree on that premise, then we need to have some form of dynamic loading of JavaScript dependencies in JupyterLab.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't agree with that either. There's one of the things we were talking about earlier is when you start the server, it could compute a hash of the things that you need to run that particular launch of the server and look up to see if it's built the bundle for that hash already. And if it hasn't, go ahead and webpack it or bundle it up, whatever we use to decide how we're going to bundle this up. So I disagree that you need to.
But then you need NPM on the server, and you need people to have like a working NPM on the server.
No, that's not required.
How do you want to bundle things without NPM?
Do you mean node or NPM? Because those are two separate things.
No, I mean both.
Yeah. So what we
can take. I think we can take bundling out of the picture, right? Bundling is an implementation detail that can be done on the server side. It doesn't have to be done. It can be done if there's a person that has Webpack already installed.
No, it does have to be.
It's not a hard requirement.
You have to bundle it.
Deduping needs to be done. Bundling doesn't.
Bundling does have to be done because you have to guarantee the order in which modules are loaded because the dependency has to be loaded before the thing that depends on it. And you can't guarantee that within a script tag unless you do full total ordering and then wait on the first script tag to load before you load the second. And so by the time you've done that, you've basically implemented your own bundler.
Yeah, and the other aspect that we can't ignore is that we're using all these Webpack plugins that allow us to load other types of assets, images, CSS, and resolve those properly with the imports. And so there has to be something in that place that does what Webpack does.
Yes, fair enough. I mean, there's other systems for loading things and being able to trace the dependency framework. So
anyway, I don't know if you guys saw the post that I made for the sort of extensions that I described earlier, that are extensions such as widgets or BQplot or things like this, where you have where I don't want the user to need to build any form of JavaScript on the server side. And so in that context, what I call JupyterLab is if you like, the Conda or the pip package that has the server extension and some JavaScript bundle that's already ready for the browser that we will never build. Someone could use our NPM module to build something else, but in this context, what I call JupyterLab is this bundle, okay? This browser-ready bundle. And
no, how do you handle duplicates, though?
So wait a minute. So now this bundle, all it does is expose a bunch of AMD loadable module, such as, for example, the Phosphor, something called Lab Services. And an extension itself is also a Conda package that comes with one or more JavaScript bundle, but let's assume one for now. And this JavaScript bundle declares all the dependencies that are part of the base platform or provided by another extension as externals, right? And there is no version check to be done on the dependencies on the JavaScript side. And the reason is that it corresponds to a Conda or pip package dependency. For example, it is both interact.jl and IPy widgets depend on widgets in the extension, Conda on the Conda package for widgets in the extension. Then the Conda solver finds a version of widgets in the extension that matches both requirements. And then the JS bundle for widgets in the extension must have a compatible version. So we're just relying on the Conda packaging system to ensure that the bundles are going to have compatible versions. So now all we need to do is have a version numbering for the Conda package that anytime the JavaScript ships every time it ships a new version of the JavaScript that has a major version number change, it also must change its major version number. And the only thing now that we need to ensure is that there is there cannot be two Conda packages that ship the same bundle. And if someone else ships something like Jupyter.js widgets, he's a bad citizen.
So I've got two immediate problems with this approach. One is that we have to write all of that. But now we're writing our own loader. We're writing our own basically bundle format, which is different from everything else out there that exists. And two, we're trying.
What we do already in the notebook currently. It's already what we do.
There's nothing in Webpack that allows you to depend on external dependencies that are loaded by another Webpack bundle. That doesn't exist. So we'd have to hack Webpack to do that ourselves, or write some shim or otherwise customize Webpack into something that's not going to be supported by the main Webpack thing. But the second thing that bothers me about this,
I get back to this. Yeah.
Okay. The second thing is that this locks us in to a particular format of people that are writing these plugins and writing these extensions and the way that they bundle their code, which we can never go back from. And so if for example, if we do all of this management and bundling and serving all of this stuff server side, and we just say that all the client has to do is write an npm package and we'll take care of everything ourselves on the server side, we can internally we can change how we do that in the future going forward when HTTP2 is prevalent, maybe when Webpack actually has a reasonable DLL solution, or when some other tool becomes standard and supported like System.js. We can change all of that transparently on the server side, and none of the plugins have to change their code. They're all still compatible and backwards compatible. If we choose a format that plugin authors have to pre-compile their code before they ship it into a particular thing, we're now stuck with that and we can never change it.
So the thing is, if we use require.js, we are stuck with require.js for a while at least, unless we make a big breaking change in the future. But anyway, I don't think that require.js is going away like in the next year, and we don't have a much better way of loading dynamically things on the browser.
What I'm saying is that what I'm saying is not depend on require.js from the perspective of the plugin author. We may depend on require.js as an implementation detail when the server is generating this bundle or actually serving up files. Like it might not serve the file that you're wanting directly. It might serve the file as it's been modified with require.js headers, but that all happens transparently to the plugin author. All the plugin author has to do is make sure they're shipping ES5 code in the common JS format, and we take care of everything else transparently.
Yeah, so bundle, we can ship. Should we ship our dependencies? I think that's a more basic question. Should we ship dependencies? And that's something we can walk away from. We can say your distribution, the plugin distribution should include the node modules directory for runtime dependencies, and possibly even pruned if you know something else is already provided by upstream, one of your dependencies. And so if you just ship that without transcribing anything, you're just shipping common JS stuff, as a self-contained package, or as a self-contained package, assuming that upstream dependencies are already loaded, then we can take care of whatever bundling needs to be done on the client side. If there is bundling, it needs to be done. Or we can have a framework like Steel or something like that that will just use the common JS and Node modules directories.
So first, you had the first remark earlier about Webpack not supporting the different externals that are defined in the Webpack bundles, right?
Yes.
So the way I went around that, because we're exactly in this situation in, for example, if you want to install BQplot, and BQplot depends on Jupyter.js widgets, which is defined in another Webpack bundle, which is the one of widgets in the extension. And the way we do this is that the notebook actually loads a bunch of, in an arbitrary order, all the extensions. And so any extension actually has two bundles. And the extension.js one, the one that is loaded by Jupyter, is only a shim that defines where to find the thing that needs to be loaded later. So every single extension defines two bundles. One is an extension.js that defines all the symbols that is going to be required by the other one. And the other one is what actually is the core of the bundle in question. So you can look at, for example, BQplot or Python.js or IPyLeaflet. They all do the same thing. They have two Webpack bundles. The first one is only defined required JS maps, and the other one is dynamically loaded later.
Yeah, but now you're combining Webpack and required JS. Like you're using two tools.
I mean, I'm using the two tools. I mean, but Webpack is an implementation details. All you need to, you can write your own ES5 JavaScript and use required JS manually if you want. Webpack is just a way.
You can, but that's not. But that's not. You have to use that dynamically. Like you're going to lose all sorts of type safety when you start doing that.
Oh yeah, sure. But at the moment, I'm using both Webpack and required.
We've gone down the path with Steve of trying to merge Webpack bundles, and it's pretty complicated. I'm more in favor of shipping dependencies so that the user doesn't need internet access and doesn't need NPM to pull down dependencies at server time. Shipping whatever minimal set of runtime dependencies that a plugin will need to be self-contained at runtime.
Well, hold on. Can I pause you right there? Because you said you want to ship dependencies so that the user doesn't need to have internet access. But if they don't have internet access, how do they get your bundle?
Well, they can get the bundle and put it on a USB drive or something. I mean, there's lots of ways. Or internal, they may not have access to NPM, npmjs.com, or GitHub. We're talking internal corporate networks. We're talking government installations or whatever.
Okay,
I mean, it's nice to have self-contained.
But you can put your npm config to point it at your own internal mirror. Like that's a solvable problem.
Yeah, if you're mirroring npm, right? So if you're mirroring npm, but that doesn't. So that was the second point. The other point was that it's completely self-contained from the user perspective. They don't need npm installed as a runtime dependencies. For a single user case where you just have Python, that's the only dependency we've had so far. It's nice to have something that's self-contained and doesn't require npm in order to activate an extension.
But so I think a couple of things are important here. One is that I don't think we should design assuming no network. We can design assuming a partitioned network that would require someone to run like their own private Conda service or their own private npm service. The other is that we need the capability, whether we like it or not, we need the capabilities of npm and some sort of bundler. If we say we're not going to rely on some or all of npm and a bundler, it necessarily means we have to implement the parts that we're not relying on. Like there's no, and so I agree.
Yeah, so we would have to implement deduping, right, in Python.
We would, and we'd also have to implement Webpack.
Or use something like Steel or Require or something like that that can load common JS formats and convert it for us. I mean, we can do some of that on the browser side.
But I thought we tried that and previously decided that that was not doable.
it's really, really slow because it makes a network request for lots.
Right. So the point here being that we're in the case here of a non-sophisticated user, single user, local host, and that's why I brought up the point. I think we have two use cases that are really different from each other. And what one use, running on localhost with a single user system, I think is different than a multi-user system with a sophisticated admin.
So to be clear, when I said really, really slow, I meant single user, like me on my local host, and it's still painfully slow. Like we're talking about the difference between loading JupyterLab in Webpack taking like half a second and loading it with Steel.js taking like 30 seconds. I mean, we're talking orders of magnitude difference because
so that's one question.
Even over local.
Right. What is the trade-off there? And is that 30 seconds the first time it comes up and then it's cached from then on?
No, it's every time you refresh the page.
Okay. And yeah, so then there's maybe metadata that you can load to help it. I mean, I agree that there's code to be written to help this work out. The point is trying to take the sophistication level down for users and to make things self-contained.
But I don't think, I mean, keep in mind, you still have to dedupe and do everything on the server side as well.
You have to dedupe.
Well, so I don't see, can you clarify how this is simpler for users? They still have to download everything over the internet. They still have to have some server side deduplication. So
they have a single bundle that they can install. They can get that bundle from wherever they are, wherever they want, and they install that one single bundle and things work. Things might be slow depending on how we implement this. I don't want to write a bundler in Python, that's for sure. A deduping maybe, but not a bundler. But there is some stuff you can do on the browser side. It might be too slow. I don't know. That's a trade-off.
Having NPM installed on the user side for many, we already had that. Having Jupyter Hub, when we have to get NPM on user machine, it's extremely complicated. Especially when.
But we're not saying that you need to do that. I mean, here's a great example. I mean, so the question, and I think it's worth saying, so when we talked the other day, to get around the situation where users may not have NPM installed, we could actually run a public build service, and that basically the notebook server lists its dependencies, lists its plugins, and we have a public REST endpoint that can bundle based on that. The benefit of this is that we can actually cache those builds. So we can, as users start to hit it, we can cache those bundles and instantly return to them a bundle that has everything they need, and they don't need NPM on their local server, and it's fast.
Yeah, I think that's totally orthogonal to being able to support somebody, a self-contained package. I think we should support bundling if somebody has NPM, or in this case, generating a bundle that you have, generating a bundle externally that you're installing.
And honestly, Brian, you want to have an external service where user posts data and you return data to them. We will get into legal trouble if we do that. Yes. Like you will start to get users that wondering like why are you sending some of the data which is on my computer to your server, and what are you doing there? And you have to be sure that there are all the security measures, that nobody gets, and there is no intrusion into the server. We don't have people tampering with this code. That's I wouldn't trust a service like that.
Even though you download packages from pip, PyPy, Conda, NPM all the time.
Yeah, but
that's you've seen.
That's a lot of code for us to write too.
Yeah, you've seen the amount of work which is behind PyPI and NPM and the team and the issues they have. I don't want to have that as well on our plate.
Yeah,
we don't have the bandwidth to maintain such a service.
Like, the other giant elephant in this room is that anything that we do on the server side that necessitates us tracing import paths through a JavaScript file means that we now have to write a JavaScript parser. And I don't want anybody to underestimate the complexity of that. It's a huge amount of work.
That's why I don't think we should write a bundler. I think we should either depend on client-side stuff or insist that NPM is installed and use Webpack or a pre-built bundler. I think we could do dependency analysis and deduping in Python.
Well, I'm going to request a timeout because we have some guests on the channel and it's already been half an hour and they want to talk about text editor.
Thank you, Matthias. Sorry, we should have started with these guys. I should have realized that this discussion could take all hour. Let's come back to Ben and Anton. Do you want to give us a short introduction to what your work is and what you're trying to do in your PR?
Yeah, do you want to do that?
Yeah, okay, about PR. So basically, I am trying to abstract over CodeMirror. And the second goal is actually to reuse part of CodeMirror widget because it has some reusable functionality like management of document context and applying some default Jupyter styles. So this PR basically extracts this functionality to separate components, like presenter who manages a model, and decorators who applies the styles and recompute caption for the widget. Yeah.
So
okay.
I have one initial question. How would a user pick which editor, the text editor and the notebook would use?
It's not the user who decides that, it's a plugin developer who decides that. Like,
okay, so are you saying that there would be a separate editor plugin for a CodeMirror-based text editor and another plugin for a Monaco-based text editor?
Yes, we have a Monaco-based editor and then for SEO editor and for standalone editor. And there is two widget factories which produce these editors. Like for standalone editor, there is a factory, and for notebook.
So actually, we are convinced that the Monaco editor is in general much better than CodeMirror, and so we would just like to use it. So it could, like for the time being, it could be maybe simpler to not abstract over the editor widget, but just use Monaco if everyone agrees. But I mean, it might change in 2 years which editor widget is the best, so to say. So that's why we came up with the abstraction, also because it sounded like in your discussions that you would more likely have this kind of abstraction.
Yeah. Does this PR actually make CodeMirror a separate plugin?
Yeah. Yeah, CodeMirror is separated, and it can be replaced by Monaco.
How heavyweight is Monaco compared to CodeMirror? Code.
How heavy?
How heavyweight?
We say no.
CodeMirror is fairly lightweight.
Okay, you mean the size of JavaScript?
Yeah,
we should check it. Can't
just
say
curious.
no.
Have you tried a notebook with a lot of cells to see how that performs with Monaco?
Yeah, one of the problem which I stumble across, for example, when I try to jump from one cell to another, for Monaco it somehow doesn't work. And I filed a bug for it. You saw it. So when you're at start position of the cell and you press up, cursor doesn't go up. So maybe Monaco doesn't fast enough in this case.
Yeah, I posted a comment about what's going on in that case, I think.
Can you give us?
I would discourage focusing too much on worrying about how notebooks perform with one particular editor and lots of cells, because in no case should we be having more than one instantiated editor at a time. Like, it should only be the cell that's currently active that has focus should be a rendered editor instance. Everything else should just be static HTML that was previously there.
Yeah.
And
Could
so
you give us
that's
a-
the current situation.
you give us a short architectural walkthrough of what is the new architecture after your PR? So I saw some presenter classes and I saw some other stuff. What did you change in the architecture?
So there used to be just widget called mirror widget. Now there is a view. It's just an abstraction over a concrete editor, whether it's Monaco or CodeMirror. It doesn't know anything about application model, like cell models or document context. And then there is a presenter who actually manages a model and can change the view. Yeah, it's like MVP is a pattern. I think you know it. Yes, it's an architecture. So it simplifies the testing, for example, of your logic, because you don't need CodeMirror for testing. You just mock your view and you write a logic for presenter, which can work with the model. And one example can be computation of edge allocation. It used to belong to CodeMirror widget. Now CodeMirror widget, just when you press up, it delegates to presenter to compute a new edge allocation. So I can reuse this logic from my Monaco editor. Yeah, so it's kind of like a separation of UI logic and application logic. It's extracted to a separate model. It's the biggest change. And yeah. And then there's decorators for views. It's since the presenter doesn't know anything about widgets, but sometimes you want to have some reusable widget logic, so there is these decorators. So basically, you can create a widget which implements a view, and then wrap it in some decorator which puts it decorate a widget. For example, it adds default styles or recomputes a caption for editor. Yes, so like.
Do you think it's possible to break the PR up into a set of smaller PRs that would be easier to review? I know that may be tough, but it's such a big change. I worry that the review is just going to take a long time.
Okay, my problem is that since I changed the base CodeMirror widget, I have like rippling changes to all components. I cannot submit without base change, and if I submit base change, then all other components are broken. So it's really hard to split it.
Well, I was going to start looking at it today and dive into it. I noticed a lot of the architectural changes. That's why I was asking for tips, essentially, and what's the big picture and how you change things.
We can sit down with somebody.
Yeah,
maybe after we look at it, we can have a more detailed discussion.
Yeah,
sit down together and have a look.
One thing that might help us in the review process is if you could make an ordered list of the things we should review first, second.
You're muted, Brian.
Brian, you're muted.
Sorry. What I was saying was it might help if you could list like the order of files or classes that we should review in a complex PR like this. It's often difficult to know even where to start with all the interdependencies. But just like a simple bulleted list of the order of.
Yeah, okay, I can do it, like plugins from which you should start, and then or other depending plugins and what kind of changes I did.
That would be helpful.
I can do it. Okay.
Thanks.
So in case you accept this PR after the review, you are also interested into the general Monaco plugin. And then with that, there would be another abstraction we would need to talk about. That is the code completion widget you've developed. I think it would be a better idea to just use a Monaco one. It's richer and like works nicer within Monaco. So we would propose another PR where we abstract over the widget, and you could still kind of use that widget you have, the completion widget, but currently it's kind of tightly bundled, and so we couldn't kind of easily exchange it. But I'm pretty optimistic that you will like the Monaco proposal better.
One question about Monaco. If we start to have only one active rendered editor per notebook, and basically only have static HTML for all the other cells that are not being edited, one thing that's nice about CodeMirror is that you can use it to do static syntax highlighting for those inactive cells. Does Monaco have that type of capability?
You could use read-only Monaco editor, and
I don't think it's in general an issue to do syntax highlighting in HTML. I mean, there's the JavaScript, the definition for the syntax highlighting is like it's a separate component. So we could just use that, the stuff Monaco uses to do the syntax highlighting.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think the key here is that the reason it becomes expensive with multiple code mirrors on the page is because sometimes it does polling in the background, and depending on what resize events happen, all of those editors are triggering DOM measurements, which causes a bunch of reflows on every resize event of the notebook. And we like to avoid that. And so once you can decide that, hey, this is what I'm rendering, this is the document that needs to be there, and you can disable all of that. Right now, all of that code mirror logic for doing all those extra measurings. If we can do that same thing with Monaco, to where it's not trying to do measurements on resize events because it's static and we know we're not going to need to render anything else, that's kind of where we want to be.
so actually Monaco doesn't do any computation on resize. You should manage it yourself. So you should call when you want to resize.
Yeah, but still, you need to do that when you resize. So
yeah,
usually.
some instances.
But we haven't measured or tried a super large notebook yet with lots of editors. We will do that. But I mean, the internet says that the VS Code editor is very fast, so there are some blogs about it, and it's the same widget. So I'm pretty optimistic that it's kind of okay. Not sure how it compares to CodeMirror. I'm sure it compared to Atom, it's much better. But I mean, maybe that's not so hard.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt that in VS Code you only have a maximum 3 editors visible at a time, and in a notebook we're talking about an editor per cell, so you can have definitely more than 3. And so it's just something to look at. Like if Monaco solves the problem and we don't have to do static rendering, then great, it's a solved problem. Definitely with CodeMirror, we can only afford to have 1 on the page at a time.
Or take shortcuts. I mean, right now we're taking shortcuts about when we actually manually resize the CodeMirror, which solve the problem by kludging around it. Great. Is there anything else about the PR that you think we should know? We really appreciate the work.
Yeah, definitely.
But like when you start reviewing, you can contact me. That I would help. Like if you have any questions, or also if you want to look together, we can do it.
Great. Thank you so much. Are there any other items that we should discuss, either before jumping back into packaging or deferring packaging to another time?
I'll just comment. So I've been going through and doing more cleanup of CSS and less, and I'm gonna basically continue that and try to take a pass at all of our different plugins. I also changed a little bit of how we're doing triage. So I went through all the issues that have no milestone and assigned milestones. The only issues that don't have milestones are ones where we're still waiting for information and we can't decide. The other thing I've done is I've created a backlog milestone, and I've started to use that backlog milestone for two purposes. One is for feature requests that we've not committed to implement yet, or two, for feature requests that we haven't decided which release they're going to go on. And this is to help a little bit with what we've noticed in other busy repos where you end up just pushing things to later releases, and that makes it very difficult when you start to work on those later releases to know what things are actually important versus which things just got dumped there just because. And so for now, we should only create, put things with like a 2.0 milestone that we're pretty sure we want to implement for 2.0. If we're not sure, just put it in the backlog, and we can always take, inventory the backlog later and assign those to concrete releases.
Great, thanks. Is there anything else that should be discussed?
Yeah, so Brian, I changed I have a PR out and I tagged you in it. The less compilation mode, less has a thing called strict math, and I've turned that on because otherwise it's breaking anytime we use calc in our CSS. It does this weird thing where if you say calc 100% minus 20 pixels, somehow that equals 80%, which is absurd. So I put that in. We didn't want to merge it in without you seeing it, so you might want to just take a look at it.
Great, yeah, that totally makes sense. I'll have a look at it. Also saw your pull request on some of the CSS stuff, Jason, so I'll look at that.
So I know I started diving into the notebook, the legacy notebook repo, and the goal is to separate a base server app that would be a Jupyter server, which is not linked to the JavaScript of the legacy notebook, so that eventually we could do another big split that would be Jupyter server and the current notebook as an extension eventually. But already just in doing that separation of classes, I found some issues. One of them is that it seems that the order in which we declare tornado handlers is like super sensitive. And when you do inheritance, you have to, actually, you cannot call the base class method and then register a new handler because you have to insert the handler in the right order. So there are like things like this. I'm not quite sure I understand the logic. I might have to ask questions to Brian or Matthias when they're available.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's great. What repos are you doing that in right now?
Notebook. I haven't opened a PR, but I can do it right now if you want. It's notebook repo, and the idea is to separate a base server app from notebook app, and the server app would have none of the deprecated APIs like PyLab and stuff like that, and only expose the services. But for example, oddly, we have a MathJax property that seems to be required for content service. I'm not really sure why when I remove it from the base server, it doesn't work anymore. So yeah, I'm trying to figure that out, like just diving into the code.
Question, Sylvan, are you working off a Notebook Master to do that?
Yes, I am.
Because there's the open question, Min has an issue about it as to whether we just need to pull Webpack out of that entirely to be able to support the old workflow of using an AMD require an individual module of the notebook, which breaks using Webpack. Just food for thought. It might be worth waiting until.
I'm just doing this on the Python side.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
But also, Sylvan, please make sure you coordinate that with Matthias and Grant Nestor, because obviously you're going to have to figure out how to manage the fact that the notebook repos itself moving forward, and so there may be some coordination that has to happen there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had some discussion recently, and a few people complained that they're still on version 2 and 3 of IPython, not Jupyter. and they basically have the chance to update every couple of years, and it's starting to be really painful for them. So I would like to be really careful about changing the notebook server and having a smooth path forward. So I agree that there is a lot of things that we want to ditch. I think that having a maybe true release where we literally really carefully deprecate things with really nice error messages and really nice talks on how to upgrade is important. So I don't want to rush into actually splitting things immediately.
All I'm doing at the moment is so the notebook app is not going to change in terms of feature, but only it will inherit from another one that doesn't have the deprecated APIs. And this is the one that JupyterLab is going to use eventually, so that JupyterLab doesn't carry along all these deprecated APIs.
Okay, we can work on that. Thank you.
Great.
So we're at our hour mark. I think we should close the meeting, but I think we should definitely keep the discussion going about third-party extensions on the PR. I think at 7:28. Is that right, Steve?
Looking.
It's in his notes.
Yep.
And to me, it seems like one big question and difference of opinion is it too much to require all users to have NPM on the server side? And there might be some other things that I'm trying to get down to, like what really is the fundamental difference in opinion and fundamental things that we're discussing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's actually 2 points to that, and I think we need to separate the two in our head. Is that NPM is not a bundler; it's an installer. It installs packages, and that is separate from bundling things up. If so there's 2 steps that need to happen when installing a new plugin. There's one that's installing the plugin and its dependencies. That can be done with NPM or any other package manager that can install directories of stuff. And then there's the other act of actually running the server, which requires all of those dependencies to be bundled up in something that's served to the client. That first step of installing packages is the job of a package manager, whether that's NPM, whether it's Conda, whether it's PyPy. That can be done by whatever means necessary. And the other is the way that we actually serve that code to the users. And so there are really 2 problems we need to solve. One of those, absolutely, I think is going to require Node, and that's you've got files on your system, and we need to serve those to the user in a deduplicated, more than likely bundled way. And I think that's going to require Node. The first one might not require Node, depending on what package manager you're using. So it's just food for thought in this conversation.
Okay, I thought it was the other way around. I didn't want to run an npmjs.com clone or force a package to be able to package up all your dependencies. But let's keep the conversation on the PR. Thanks for splitting it up. I totally agree. Thanks, everyone. Till next week. Thanks especially Sven and Anton. I hope you guys can join us more often. Thanks for your contributions. We really appreciate it. Goodbye, Internet.